When you call a suicide helpline in Japan, you may have to dial that number 30 or 40 times because the lines are so busy. A lot of people have a lot of problems, but nobody to talk to, nobody to listen. And they say, please God, someone answer the phone. I dream of a war on suicide, but I don't even know who is the enemy. Who is it? What is it that's killing so many of us? 1 million people in the world every year. 30,000 lives lost in Japan alone. I don't know what I'm doing. I just know I have to do something. In Japan, nobody dares to talk about the causes of suicide or how to fight them. But manuals teaching you how to kill yourself sell over 1 million copies. What if 10,000 lives could be saved in Japan? Not by miracles, but by ideas, by honesty. Would anybody dare to listen? If death is darkness, this is about life. This is about trying to take back life from the jaws of death. This is about choosing hope over despair. Even when you are desperately hanging on by your fingernails. 300,000 Japanese people have killed themselves in the last 10 years. That's around the population of Iceland. The Japanese suicide rate is twice that of America, 3 times that of Thailand, 9 times higher than Greece, and 12 times higher than the Philippines. Is that something acceptable? Or is it time we start to fight back? One year, driving around Tokyo, asking so many people the same question again and again.
The suicide rate is high in Japan still. To be honest, I don't know the real reason. But the fact is, killing ourselves is always maybe in the back of our minds. We see every day in the newspaper, in the media, some people are killing themselves, including famous and successful people like politicians and business people. When we face a serious problem, we have to make some certain choices. And one of the ultimate choices that we may make is killing ourselves.
日本人の自殺の一つの傾向はね、非常に暗示、サジェスティブに弱いんですね。そういう方法で死んだ仲間を見つけるとですね、もうみんなそれに同調する。ですから彼らはネットで時々示し合って一緒に死のうと。で、これに乗ってくる日本人というのは非常に多いんですね。で、彼らの率直な気持ちは一人よりも何人か一緒の方が安心だということなんですけどね。けれども結局みんな死んじゃうわけですからね。で、なぜ日本人はこんなにもサジェスティブに弱いのか。
There are no samurai left in Japan today. There are no kamikaze pilots either. All that remains is a feeling that suicide can be beautiful.
The suicidal tendency among Japanese authors has been extremely high. And if you just list them going through the decades, there are many who took their lives. And the pattern is totally out of shape with the rest of the world. There is nowhere else where the suicide of novelists is so prevalent.
この自殺多発場所はなんでそういう自殺の名所になったかということなんですね。当時僕の場合には地元のね作家で高見純というのがいます。死の淵とかっていう本を書いてね、それがを売り物にして、ね、観光地にしている。また足摺岬には民谷虎彦ですかという人の小説映画化になってそこを自殺の名所として売り物にしています。
Yes, I was the person that suicide is a kind of beautiful thing before having the experience that my friends committed suicide. Suicide was something unrealistic. That's why I could easily believe that suicide is something beautiful.
What Mishima did in the real life was not so beautiful. What he killed himself in real life is so different from how he wrote in his novel, right? In his novel, killing by himself is so beautiful, right? And it's such a sort of gorgeous moment or something. That's what he described in his novel.
His suicide should not have happened. I was broken by it. I was really, really unhappy with the suicide. And it's still with me today. It's an unbearable event. And when I say it should not have happened, I mean that those of us who knew that he had suicidal tendencies should have stepped forward and should have found a way to enable him to continue to live.
Talking about the book publication, I was stunned to find How to Kill Yourself, in which the way how to put your hanging ropes, how to make it, all the details.
I think it's quite natural to have such manual of how to kill yourself, because if I decide to kill myself, I don't want it to take so much time to until I totally die, right? Because I don't want it to suffering from pain or something.
It was like a teenager's room, and unusually for Japan, he had like a bunk bed. He was half naked, wearing pajama bottoms, on the bed with his back facing me. His back looked kind of pink, and he looked like he was asleep. And there was like a piece of paper attached to his back, and I didn't really pay attention to it. And for some reason, I felt like I should wake him up and see what's going on. And as I was about to do, the detective stopped me and told me, "Hey, stop, move back, do not touch that kid." And when I looked at his back, written on the paper was, "Do not touch, fear of electrocution." And looking from the side, you could see that he had taken wires and sort of plugged them into the sockets, the plugs of the wall, and taped them to his chest and had electrocuted himself. And there was a kind of like slightly unpleasant, acrid smell. Like I guess it smelled a little bit like burnt bacon. I don't know how to describe it. And the detective showed me a copy of the book. It had been marked with a fusen, which is like, I guess, a post-it in English, at the section for electrocuting yourself. And the detective said, I'd like you to write about this because I think this book is a really horrid thing. And that parents should know that if they see their kids with this book, that they may seriously be considering suicide, and that they should talk to their children and explain to them suicide is never a very good answer. And I agreed with him.
私は去年1年間約80件の自殺者の葬儀に立ち会ってきました。ご遺族から一人一人お話を聞きました。ほとんどの方は、その本の存在を間接的に何らかの形で読んだことがあるないは別としても存在は知ってました。そして私は数百件の死にたい、辛い、もう生きていくのが耐えられないって方の相談を受けましたけれども、ほぼ全員がその本の存在を知ってました。やはり何らかの影響は確実に及ぼしているかと思います。
It whispers in your ear, kill yourself, Are you tired? Are you overworked? Are you burdened with problems? Wouldn't it be nice to go to sleep and never wake up again? I mean, that's kind of how one of the chapters runs. It makes suicide seem like an appealing solution. And by rating the levels of impact and, the lethality and the amount of pain involved, it appeals to various different kinds of people as to, how do you want to kill yourself? Why do you want to kill yourself? Do you want to kill yourself and cause your family great distress? Well, then jump in front of a train because the train company is then going to make your family pay huge damages. The problem with most people who kill themselves is very short-sighted. There's some part of their brain that thinks they're going to be around to enjoy the funeral or the whole commotion that's created by their own death. Or that they'll know how much they were loved, or that their girlfriend will realize they love them, But when you're dead, you're not around to do that, unless you believe in ghosts, and even then, what do you do after that? It's not like you can come back and reclaim your body.
I think media, particularly TV stations, why they are reporting the specific name of the victim and the way how they killed themselves, these things are just intriguing somebody who wanted to kill themselves.
They love news stories like this. Somebody goes in front of the train, they're hit by the train, their body flies in the air, off the track, in through the convenience store window, injuring 3 people reading magazines inside. That is sensational. People enjoy that. But if you want to do something to stop train suicide, that's not interesting. We're not interested in it at all.
マスメディアに自殺のニュースが出ると、次の日は自殺がポッとどこでも出てくるけど、日本は桁が違うんですね。100人、1000人。で、それはね、やっぱりこれは日本人のメンタリティでしょうけれども、やっぱり良くも悪くもやっぱり隣の人のやってる方法をみんな真似るというかですね。
They regard suicide as the way to entertain audiences.
メディアの中でもう首をつって亡くなっているシーンとか飛び降りるシーンとかも当たり前に出てくる、その部分がかなり放置されているので、自分でイメージしやすいと思うんですよね。亡くなり方、首をつるっと飛び降りるとかですね。そこそ尿が出たり、もうよだれが垂れたり、涙がとかですね、首をつって亡くなった時には、そうした体に損傷というか、ダメージができるんだというようなことは、今それほど語られていない。
Suicide manuals and all the countless suicide websites will all tell you that Aokigahara Forest is the most beautiful place on earth in which to die. Now I must admit, it is a truly beautiful place, but not to die in, because your body will be left undiscovered for several months, be eaten by all the little forest animals, and become the happy home for a wide variety of insect life. Until eventually you will be carried out in a black plastic bag by tired municipal workers earning $10 an hour. But there is something even worse, the human scavengers who will come to look for you.
Treasure hunting. They're not looking for gold or silver. They're looking for rope, razor blades, shoes, wallets, or they're looking for the jackpot. They're looking for a hanging body. If you put that hanging body on YouTube, you'll get 1 million people viewing it, downloading it. You get TV shows, serious news shows coming here, looking for bodies, viewing corpses, skeletons from every angle. You've got movies coming here talking about ghosts, spirits, it's haunted, all trying to make money, all trying to use here as entertainment, a place of tragedy. And what happens is that more and more people will come here. More and more people will kill themselves. It's already the #1 suicide spot in the world. Stop advertising it, mass marketing it to make money. Why not try and do something about suicide rather than promoting it? You've lost your job, you've been cut in all of the employment cutting that's going on, but you still have a mortgage with 20 years left to pay. You've got children's education fees to pay. What do? Where you go, you get the solution is here. It's very easy. You get all your debts are paid, your mortgage repayments are finished, and your children will have a great education. And you'll get maybe $300,000 or so. And all you have to give is your life. People would come, sign a life insurance contract and go straight out and kill themselves under the nearest train. They said, okay, well, that can't happen. That's a little bit ridiculous. So we'll put a 1-year exemption period on this. So you signed a contract and you must wait 1 year before killing yourself to get the money. Well, that's still a very, very good deal for desperate people. So the suicide rate spiked on the 13th month. The insurance company said, okay, well, what if we have 2 years exemption? So you signed a contract, you can't kill yourself for 2 years, the 25th month. Why is it that life insurance companies pay out on suicide? Stop paying people to kill themselves. Stop incentivizing people to die and leave their families alone. Which family would say, I'll take the money, I'll lose the husband?
One of the things I really admire about Japan and the Japanese is this deep sense of personal responsibility, especially as it relates to debt and money. And one of the unfortunate things about Japan and the Japanese is that a way of showing responsibility is to kill yourself. It shows sincerity, that you really are sorry.
借金の問題ということで言うと、やはり多重債務がものすごく自殺の大きな要因としてあったと思います。最初は生活に困った時に家族や友人からお金を借りてなんとか生活を続けていこうとする。でもそれでも仕事が見つからない、安定した収入がないと、また家族や友人からお金を借りる。で、それを繰り返しているともういい加減にしてくれと言われてしまって。でも生きるためにお金が必要だって言った時に、一番手っ取り早く借りられるのが消費者金融。
Consumer finance in Japan has always had a little bit of a reputational problem. It's a very difficult industry to regulate because all you need are a big bag of cash and many desperate people to be able to charge them very high interest rates. In fact, it's a little bit difficult to distinguish in Japan sometimes the difference between consumer finance and loan shark. Despite the support of big banks and glossy TV commercials, some very old-style collection methods have been used in recent years.
Why not sell your eyeballs to eye banks? Why not sell your kidneys for transplant use? So this exactly is saying just you, why not kill yourself and get your insurance payout money as a fund for repayment of a loan?
In 2005, the government noticed a very disturbing trend. 5,000 people had killed themselves and life insurance policies were paid, not to their families, but to consumer finance companies. Consumer finance companies were routinely taking out life insurance policies on borrowers. They had never bothered to tell them, and a suicide was a win for a consumer finance company.
Consumer loan companies, people visit not only to the debtors, but also their family members or relatives or their offices. So this gives a very big pressure for them to select the last way to commit suicide.
We've got to control the consumer finance companies. We're going to reduce the interest rates. We're going to crack down on the behavior of companies. And everybody said, this is great. The government is finally doing something positive. But there was one big winner from this. And unfortunately, that was organized crime.
People who cannot get money from legitimate sources will simply go to shadier sources, and the shadier sources will be better and more vicious about collecting their money.
夕方5時ぐらいになると自分の担当している仕事はもう大体終わりましたと。で5時半になれば本当は帰ってもいい時間ですと。でも周りを見るとみんな残業をしてます。仕事がそれぞれあるようです。で自分の上司も仕事をまだやってるようですと。じゃあそういう時に多くの日本人はどうするかというと、お付き合い残業というんですか、自分が本当は仕事はないんだけど周りがなんとなく帰るような雰囲気じゃないから、そういう空気じゃないからそのまま一緒に残ってしまうと。でもちろん建前としては最近では早く帰りなさいと、過労死になると良くないからとか、家族との時間をもっと持たなきゃいけないからというのをみんな建前ではよく言うんですが、そういうのを実際に真に受け取ってですね、じゃあ早く5時半ぐらいになったらもう帰っちゃいますというふうにするとですね、後で陰でですね、誰かあいつは誰々君はすぐに帰ってしまうよねと、周りの空気を読んでいないよねというふうに言われるのがオチなんです。
Nobody kills themselves in a right state of mind. Nobody calmly says, you know what, I think that's enough now. I think it's time to kill myself. I've had enough of life. It is always an element of mental illness. It is always an element of depression that forces people to do that. 2/3 of all depression comes from a trigger, from a pressure, from I can't get enough sleep. I'm being overworked. I'm being bullied by my boss. I'm being forced to work these terrible long hours. I'm being given impossible goals that I can't do. I'm an inferior person. I'm a failure in the company, and I just want to get out. I can't take it anymore. I just can't take it anymore.
Again, this hierarchical male chauvinistic society that's killing them, oppressing them.
メンタルが調子悪くなって会社を休んでしまうとか、いわゆる勤怠の不要に関してはやはりまだ多くの特に中高年の社員から見ると性格が弱いとかですね、努力が足りないみたいに取る人はやはり結構多いです。これが日本の職場の現状だと思います。
A Japanese taxi driver will never try to cheat you by taking you the long way to a destination. He goes the wrong way because he just doesn't know where he's going. He's probably working a 30-hour shift and is living a life he never expected or wanted.
友達にもですね、会社の同期にも元会社を経営してたっていう人が何人かいるんですね。でやはり不景気で会社が潰れて、そうなるともうほとんどそういう人たちっていうのはスキルがないので、また年も年なんで他の会社で雇ってくれないかといっても、それこそコンビニのバイトなんか雇ってもらえないし、だから結局こういう、タクシードライバーの仕事っていうのは年齢も関係ないし、ある程度地理を知っていれば、あと運転ができれば、基本的にお年寄りに限らず若い人たちにとってこの時代っていうのは自分が何をやりたいか、やりたいものを見つけることができない、夢を見つけることができない時代だそうです。だから自分の存在価値が見出せない。僕はやっぱり自分が何のためにここにいるのか、何のためにいるのかっていうことを確認できる何かが彼らには必要だと思うんですね。
試験のプレッシャーって結構大きいんですけれども、最近の親の傾向として教育を投資として考えるっていうのが強くなってきていると思います。で、 例えば入試なんて言うと、親も、いい格好して、で、面接受けなきゃいけないし、そのために、準備もしなきゃいけないし、そうするとやっぱり自然と、自分の時間もお金も費やしているのに、やっぱりそれ子供にもちゃんとしてほしいっていうのを求めますよね。そういうプレッシャーが結構親から子供に対して来ているということが言えるんじゃないかと思います。
I know if I don't get into the right school, high school, I'm not going to have a chance. If I don't get into the right university, I don't have a chance. And in university, the suicide rates are really, really high in Japan. People failing exams, people jumping off the buildings, and you know, it really doesn't happen on the same level anywhere else.
Related to suicide, bullying is a big issue, in particular talking about youth suicide. And there is a big fight between groups and individuals.
A girl last year killed herself. She was 8 years of age. She was being bullied in school. The bullies had written all over her school books, shine, which means die. The school ignored the complaints from her parents. They said she wrote that on her books herself. She hung herself in her bedroom with a towel, and only afterwards then the school comes out with an apology. It's always too late in the case of bullying.
Talking about my experience in elementary school days, my teacher led the bullying to me. I was a kind of unique student from the perspective of character and conduct. The teacher didn't like that and started bullying, and other students followed. For people who have unique way of thinking or unique behavior, Japanese schools are a difficult place to live.
In the hospital, there is an emergency room, and I found there are many cases, so-called wrist cut. They are usually young girls or young women, and they cut their own wrist with knives or razor.
私最初ちょっと主人は DV あったんですよ。でそういう DV 保護センターみたいなとこ入ったんですけど、なんか扱いが冷たいんですよね。で次行ったのが警察になんか連絡したんです。もちろん警察はそんな全然何にもしてくれないし、そういう公共の施設っていうのは冷たいです。何にもしてくれないです。
30代の問題で私自身が非常に心を痛めているケースがあります。その方はいわゆる非正規労働者、つまり派遣働いてたんですけれども、仕事を失ってその方の社員寮も出なきゃいけなくなった。実家に帰ったわけですけれども、実家とのその家族が折り合いが悪いわけです。女性も30過ぎますと、お父さんお母さんから「あなた結婚しなさいよ」いつまで家でいるのってことを言われる方がやっぱ多い。その中で居場所がなくなってしまう。その中で、居づらくなってしまった。だけどもじゃあ仕事に出るか。でもなかなか今仕事がないと。その中で気分がうつうつとしてしまって鬱になってしまっていわゆる引きこもってしまった。部屋から一歩も出られなくなってしまった。当時付き合ってた彼氏からも殴る蹴るっていわゆる DV ドメスティックバイオレンスっていうことを受けてますます人間関係が不信感になってしまった。そしてある時、ご自身のお家のしかもご夫婦のお父さんお母さんの寝室であえて首を吊った。つまりそれは嫌がらせ、ある意味その見せつけでもあるわけですね。私はこんなに辛いのに分かってくれなかった。私は現場に行って警察の現場検証から立ち会いました。そして首の縄のロープをほどいて棺に入れて最後火葬する時にお花を入れようとしました。ですから今のもはっきり覚えてるんですけれども、その女性は首をぐっと絞められてしまっていわゆる窒息死ですね。そうするとベロがですね、 垂れるわけですね。つまり私たちが走る時に息苦しくなる時、そういった形でベルが垂れてしまってですね、ちょっと顔がちょっと強烈な顔だった。それでお母さんが棺の蓋を閉める時に、我々お花を入れさせてくださいということを言うわけですけれども、すいません、もうちょっとお顔がね、できれば見せたくないので、もうお花も結構です。
1/3 of all suicide victims in Japan are over 60. But nobody really talks much about elderly suicide. They're just old, tired of life. What's to talk about?
The challenges after retirement. Number one, no place to go every day. Number two, no identity in a society. Number three, no hobbies. Number four, no human networks. And number five, no idea of what I should do.
私今小さなコミュニティで医療をしておりますけれども、非常にこれはもう僻地に相当する農村部ですから、老人高齢者が非常に多いところです。で、高齢者まだ足が丈夫な方々は病院にまで来られますけれども、もう足が不自由な方というのもほとんどお家におります。それも寝たきりの一歩手前です。ですからもう家から出られない程度の方です。その方たちが奥様がいらっしゃればまだいいんですけども、ないしはご主人がいらっしゃればいいんですけども、いない場合には非常にもう悲劇的な状況になっているというのがこれは現実でして、これはいわゆるもう栄養的にも料理もできない、それから家の中の衛生上の問題もあり、それからセルフケアもできないから自分自身もお風呂も入らないし、もうその状況に置かれて、それでもって一人で生活しておるというこの本当に悲劇的な状況である。
If you're on your own, it's a very, very lonely place in Japan. And loneliness is one of the key factors of the problems, particularly for the elderly. You know, they can't get out, there's no way of getting to them, who wants to talk to them. Loneliness kills so many people in Japan.
実はうつ病で私はもう死にたいですとは絶対に言いませんから、おそらく来た時にはどうも肩が重い、夜が眠れません、元気ないんです、頭痛がいつもして調子悪いんですと言いますから、そういう時に我々医者としてはそれがただの頭痛でないことを早く気がついて、家庭の状況を把握するような質問をすることによって早く発見をする、マスクと仮面うつ病という言葉がありますけれども、そういったものを早く早期に発見して何らかの対策をする、それが一つはお話をするカウンセリングということでもあり、必要であれば薬物療法というのを早めに始めるということは僕はぜひともしなきゃいけない。
I often talk with my wife. If we suddenly get a stroke or something and paralyzed and live on chairs and always need children's help, care, it won't be meaningful to live long life if it causes others some trouble. And most likely, normal person will start to think, maybe I should disappear from Earth, so I won't cause trouble to loved ones.
Gambling is not allowed in Japan. Gambling is illegal. So what you are seeing here is not gambling. It just looks like gambling. It's people winning and losing money. Some losing money and building massive debts. But in Japan, remember please, gambling is not an addiction. And it has absolutely no link to suicide or debt or anything negative. It's all about happiness, especially for the elderly, who really enjoy spending 7 or 8 hours a day watching all the little pachinko balls falling and saying, "What a wonderful life I have." But please, as this poster says, don't leave your child in the car when you're gambling, because they will be cooked alive in the summer heat. Alcohol linked to suicide in Japan. How dare you even suggest that? In Japan, alcohol makes you feel better when you're lonely and depressed. And a bottle of whiskey can help you think more clearly and get your life in order. Nobody ever does anything stupid when they're drunk and depressed. And on TV, all the big celebrities will tell you Come on, have another beer. It's the summertime.
There is really no facilities whatsoever for trying to cure alcoholism here. No statistics exist on the subject. The journalism world doesn't cover it at all. I've probably seen not more than 2 stories in 50 years on the problems of alcohol. It's just a problem that's considered to be part of Japanese society, and therefore it's not a subject to be taken up.
私は東京都の新宿区というところに住んでいます。新宿というところは繁華街があって、歌舞伎町、東京の歌舞伎町っていうところがあって、全国から、いろんな方が働きに来る。そして歌舞伎町っていうところは、繁華街であり、当然水商売や風俗があったりします。東京都の統計を見ると、新宿区の自殺に関して言うと、20代、30代の方が非常に多いんですね。特に女性に関してはやっぱりそういった20、30代の方が多いわけです。それは他の区ではなかなかありえないことなんですね。なぜ新宿区で若い者の女性が自殺が多いかというと、当然こういうことが考えられます。私は去年女性の新宿区の方の葬儀を何件かやらせていただきましたが、やはり夢を持って地方から出てくるわけですね。そして何かしらのきっかけで夢が破れ、風俗とか水商売で働くわけですけれども、また男性に騙されてお金をむしり取られたりとか、何らかの事情で病気を持ってしまったりとか、その中で将来を悲観して、飛び降りたりとか、薬を飲んでしまったりとか、自殺をする方が非常に多い。
That's the blue light. If you look at the blue light, everything will be all right. All your troubles, all your worries, they just melt away. It's a cheap form of suicide prevention, like happy paintings on the walls of stations. And to be honest, I thought blue lights were a complete joke. But early results are showing a dramatic fall in the number of suicides at the stations with the blue lights. Nobody can really explain why, but blue lights are working. Trains seem a particularly effective way to kill yourself, but statistics show that 40% of all train hit victims do not die. They're just horribly injured. They lose their legs, they lose their arms. Pity the train drivers who are left haunted by what is known as the last look. Eye-to-eye contact, the split second.
僕の友人が荻窪駅で自殺をしてね。で、もう10年前ですけれどもね、その時の請求額は600万です。で、その後、JR の人と親しくなって、JR のホットラインを僕ら引き受けたもんですからね。で、なんと JR にはですね、人身事故担当の課長がいるんですね。で、その課長に聞いたら、一度人身事故が起きると、だいたいね、全体で7000万ぐらいの損失だそう。それはお客さんが他の路線に行ったり乗らないから。で、それプラス遺体の処理とかね。で、600万っていうのは遺体の処理に関わる経費だそうです。それを請求してきたんです。で、家族が全部払ったんですけどね。日本の社会常識ではやっぱりそれは遺族の責任ということになるんですけどね。
For those who kill themselves in rented apartments, their parents can expect a large bill from the landlord because evil spirits are supposed to have frightened away other tenants.
だいたいお祓いというのはイーブルスピリットがそこにあるという認識でしょ。で、なぜ自殺だけがイーブルスピリットなのか。で、これはもう大変な人権侵害であり、差別の最たるもので、僕はそういう認識は許せないと。ですから少なくとも裁判所はね、お祓い料の請求はね、これは人権に反すると いう判断で僕はね、却下すべきだと思うんですね。
One suicide has 10 suicide attempts. That means there is at least 300,000 suicide attempts in Japan every year. That means that there's a lot of people who have tried to kill themselves that are going to the hospitals.
In Japan, it is reported that it's amazing number. It is reported that 10 to 20% of all the patients transfer to the most critical emergency medical centers in Japan, including like cardiac problems or strokes or traffic accidents. 10 to 20% of the patients transferred to the ER are suicide attempters in Japan.
The suicidal people are coming into the hospitals every day, cutting their wrists, overdosing, and what happens is that the hospital will put a bandage on their wrist and say, don't do it again, off you go.
They cut again and again and again and came back to the emergency room.
You could save so many lives. So a suicide attemptee comes in. Option one, have a psychiatrist there. Have some kind of a social worker there. Is it too expensive? Yes. Well, at least take their name, take their details. Follow up with them. Are they all right afterwards? Why not put them in touch with some psychiatrists? Why not give them some free consultations? Incentivize them to try and get help, to not just come back, go back home, and a week later cut their wrists again and they're off again. Because one of the next times, they're not going to the hospital, they're going straight to the morgue.
Here we are, at the ground zero of suicide in Japan, the Japanese mental health care system. When facing the dark horrors of depression, what support can Japanese people expect in their hour of greatest need?
Psychiatric services are not so good in Japan so far, I think. One reason is that a large number of psychiatric people are hospitalized, institutionalized, and partly because of that, the support in the community, support for the psychiatric patients in the community are not good or not sufficient. And so the psychiatric patients are very hard to live. And in these very difficult societies, these kind of people, so to say, the weak peoples, are pushed aside to out of the society, and they choose to kill themselves.
Of 30,000 suicides in Japan, 10,000 are already in the mental health care system. They are having consultations, they are getting medications, or they have been institutionalized.
Japanese psychiatrists are forced to deal with a very large patient base, so that the average clinic can include 40 or 50 clients or patients in a metropolitan hospital setting, such that the psychiatrist only has 3 or 4 minutes per individual.
Do you think you can solve your problems in 3 or 4 minutes? Especially when the doctor is already spending half of that time writing down so many prescriptions of medicine for you to take. Does it work? Does it matter? Of course, here you go, take your medicine. There's already somebody else outside the door. You know, you have your problems with the debt, you have the problems with your family, you've been bullied at school, you're feeling that life has no meaning. That's the time over now, please.
As a result of limited resources, both in terms of psychiatry as well as paraprofessionals, trained psychiatric nurses, social workers, and other mental health professionals, care in Japan has been largely focused on psychosis, largely inpatient, and has included very long hospital stays and primarily custodial care.
When you go into a mental institution in Japan, it's very hard to get out because mental institutions are private institutions, like hotels. And we know that in a hotel, you have to fill the beds. You have to fill the room occupancy.
Physicians have to rely unduly on high doses of multiple antipsychotic medications, which is really very unusual. So the kinds of treatment that one might expect in the West, individual therapies, group therapies, milieu therapies, simply don't really exist yet in the inpatient psychiatric settings here.
Every journey must have an end. Our journey ends here, on the cliffs of Tojimbo. Yukio Shige was a policeman sent to work at one of Japan's most infamous suicide locations. His job was often to go out in a small boat and fish the remains of victims out of the sea. In 1 month he recovered 10 bodies and wondered, why did nobody ever try to stop the people jumping? When he retired, he came back to Tojimbo to try to do something. He used his retirement money to open a tiny cafe near the cliff's edge. And from there he patrols every day, all day, the symbol of the loneliness of suicide prevention in Japan.
交通事故の場合はね、警察の責任ですよ。事故防止、交通事故防止って犯罪になりますから、昭和45年にね、交通戦争って言われてあの当時1万6000人ほど亡くなって、で警察が旗振り役をして交通事故をなくそうってやったんですね。官民が一体としてやった。で今現在5000人切ったんですね。3分の1になったんですよ。日本の自殺見ると12年間3万人以上であるにもかかわらず、ここの現場を見てもその責任者何にも対策をしない。これはダメでしょうということで、行政ができないんやったら、民間でできる我々がしてやろうかということで、私が仲間を募って、で今87名のね、うちのボランティアの人がいるんですけども、大体そのうちの20名ぐらいがね、一緒に巡回してくれています。ということで、今日現在6年7ヶ月この活動をしまして、今日までに297名の自殺を食い止めてきました。どういう状態かというと、ここが一番自殺が多い場所なんですね。ここに一人で日没を待っているんですよ。座ってるんですよ。誰か声かけてくれるのを待っているんですね。そんな人がいて、でその人たちに声かけて、悩み事何話をお聞きして、でその悩み事を解決する、そのお手伝いもやってます。ということで皆さんね、今297名ですけども、この中の4人だけかな、あと亡くなったんです。他の人たちはみんな元気で再出発しています。誰も死にたくないんですって、助けを待ってるんですって。なんでそこに手を差し伸べないか。国民の命って国の財産でしょ、宝物でしょ。みんな助けてくれって言うてるんでしょ。なんでそこに手を差し伸べないの。分かっていてあっち向いてるってこと、それは犯罪です。保護責任者遺棄罪そのものなんですよ。ここで30年間に646名の方がここで飛び込んで亡くなってるんですよ。646人ですよ。わずか3カ所なんですよ。ここで飛び込む場所、その3カ所何とでもできるでしょ。それ何とかしてくださいって言うてるんですよ、地元に対して。しかしここは観光地だから、何を言ってるんですよ。お金持ちだから、金儲けのために人の命関係ないの。そんなもん犯罪ですよ。殺人罪と同じなんですよ。もう答えで出てますね。何をしたらいいかって分かってます。しかしまだしようとしない。私は許せないと思う。
I thought, what a nightmare to have a neighbour like this. One who was always knocking on your door for tea and sympathy. As she had got older, work had got less and less, She said she'd barely leave her room. I quickly got bored listening. It was depressing. So when a knock would come, I turned down the TV and keep quiet. She slipped a tiny note under my door with her phone number, email address, phone email, saying, "Talk to you soon." Then thankfully she stopped knocking. A couple of months later I got angry when the landlord wouldn't fix the gas leak that was leaving such a horrible smell in the corridor. She was only discovered after 3 or 4 weeks of the summer heat. 2 days later, I looked out the spy hole of my door to see an elderly lady stacking boxes. Despite the smell, she didn't wear a mask. It was still her daughter. No matter how many people I interview, what answers I find, saving 10,000, I will always know I couldn't even save one. I didn't care. It's not up to the government to save us, blaming this or that. Sometimes all you need to save somebody's life is to take the time to listen. If we're looking for the enemy on the war on suicide, all we have to do is look in the mirror.